I'm Hilary Rosen. I was the chairman and CEO of the Recording Industry Association of America from 1987 till 2003. I think I first heard of Napster. I know I've said this publicly several times, and so I should know this story down by pat now. But I believe it was sometime around this in the summer, and actually our head of anti-piracy brought it to my attention. He had come across it, and he was sitting in my office showing it to me, and there were like 800 users on Napster simultaneously, and we were amazed because they used to have this thing where you could look down in the corner and see how many users were online. I think by the time Napster eventually, right before it shut down, it was something like, I don't know, 45 million users or something like that. So when I think about that progression, it was pretty quick. Well, there was quite a bit of ignorance, I guess, in the general public and even in the music business, even as we were preparing litigation against Napster. And we were initially having discussions with them, trying to see whether we could come to some better resolution. But even as we were kind of preparing the litigation, and I remember talking to a company executive who hadn't really tried it, and I think he was going somewhere. I'm like, don't go anywhere. Go to your computer right now and follow my instructions. And he did it, and he thought, this is amazing, and he didn't think that our colleagues had seen it. So at the next RIA board meeting in Los Angeles, I had a computer and a screen set up, and we literally played Name That Tune for about 45 minutes, where the heads of all the record companies were offering up names of songs and artists and new releases, and some that hadn't even been released yet, or some that had just been released that week, and pretty much everything could be found. Well, people were astounded, just much like, the music fan who happened on Napster was. People were infuriated. I think the room sort of ran the gamut of emotions, from excited, thrilled, to just completely outraged. Well, people work in the music business because they are fans. They don't work there to keep music away from people or to stop anything from happening. They went to work in the record industry because they wanted to find ways to meet great artists and help great artists develop their talent and develop a fan base. So, initially when you think about the opportunity for distribution, and when you looked at something like Napster and you saw real fandom taking place, it's fun and it's exciting. On the other hand, these very same people poured their lifeblood and saw their artists in the studio for weeks at a time, months at a time, a year or two on a record, to get everything right, to get it to sound perfectly, to remaster it 15 times. And here it was on a server in a really condensed, crappy version. MP3 is fairly crappy audio, and being freely distributed. So I think they felt extremely protective, both of their artists and of their business. 20/20 hindsight is always easy. At the time, there were a lot of players, and it was extremely complicated. It wasn't just the record companies, the music publishers, and the artists, and the retailers. I remember multiple conversations where retailers would say, record companies are not allowed to sell things cheaper online than they can buy in my store. And since 95% of music was still being sold in retail stores, that was kind of a powerful constituency. Artists would say, yeah, sure, experiment, but don't screw up my Walmart sales. And then I would, you'd turn around and see the artist on TV saying, oh yeah, I love it when my fans, steal my music. Meanwhile, they're calling me up saying, Hilary, get my stuff off online, off the pirate sites. So, there was a lot of there were a lot of moving parts, and I think ultimately the record companies who were in most control of the distribution side should have moved more quickly to experiment with more technology options. Having said that, the technology industry was no, picnic either here. There was very little regard for the value of music and the value of the intellectual property that went into it. Faster internet lines became a mantra because they knew that there was a big demand for it, because people wanted to download and upload content. CD burner sales were way up because people were making copies of equipment. So, people were there were industries benefiting from the music industry's loss, and their incentive to come to the table with solutions, was, I think, at the time more limited too. I think it'll be seen as kind of a great idea gone tragic. I've said this in other places. I actually think that there hasn't been an online music service as good as Napster since Napster. Whether it was how many live recordings were available, the bootlegs, or whether it was the ease of sharing. Music just isn't that accessible right now. It's ubiquitous, but it's not always so accessible in that kind of a way. Now, there are lots of reasons for that. I think there was a lot of greed on the part of Napster's founders, not Sean, but the venture capitalists who came in there to help them afterwards. Wanted a lot of money. There wasn't a lot of money in digital music. The record companies wanted a lot of money out of it. I just think that it'll be seen as kind of this really great pioneering effort that failed because a lot of grown-ups couldn't get along.